I'm not doing my job. Call the planning board to order here at 7:05.
I move we approve the minutes as distributed.
Yeah. Good. After the minutes, the first item on the agenda is Walton Solar farm, which is kind of right across the street. It's on the 40 acres or so in the middle of Jamie McDonald's land. And we're going to hear from Caitlin.
We're phoning in our engineer.
And Greg. And Paul Williams. Paul Williams, correct, right?
And on the phone with us, we have Greg Dixon, who's our engineer. He's on speakerphone.
So go ahead and take the away, folks.
Sure. Yeah, I can hand out.
Yeah.
So we made a PowerPoint, but you might have technical and you just use to get your follow along.
Thank you. This online. More questions. Lots of questions.
I hope we can.
I'm sure you will.
And it sounds like you guys are keeping that reviewing.
Should I ask you, do you object that I am a neighbor to Jamie McDonald?
I do not object.
Okay.
No.
And that I also have a solar farm 20 acres on my land.
Oh, no kidding.
Do you object to me sitting on board with you?
Oh.
Use myself.
We have no objection to this.
I have no financial interest in, but I just thought for the sake of honesty.
You appreciate it? Yes, I'm a voter too.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It's a small house.
Yeah. Not a problem. I have some extra. Yeah, sure.
And I have to say that I'm uncertain about whether that would be like a sustainable approach or not. And we're also kind of suffering from the delays of how to deal with COVID. So would you like us to stay back here or stand in front of people? How would you prefer us to do? I would hear you better if you were closer to me. Okay. This is a large echoing noise. It's just how
Yeah, we are recording.
Recording?
Yeah.
Very good.
And then it's posted on the town website.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for having us here tonight. Again, Paul Williamson from Walden Renewables and Caitlin Nickerson from Flycatcher LLC, who's been doing all the environmental permitting for us. And on the phone, we have Greg Dixon from Crescent Lansing and their engineering firm done all the design work for the project. Go through a very brief introduction of Walden Renewables. The company was founded by Henry Wexner and Jack Kenworthy in 2009. They have developed both wind power projects in New Hampshire, solar projects in Massachusetts, Vermont. On your second slide here, or page number 3, there's a list of our current activities. You can see that we're pretty robust and active throughout the Northeast United States. What's not on here is just added, some new projects in, southeast in Georgia and also in Colorado. But you can see that we're very active here in the Northeast in Maine, what we refer to internally as the Baldwin Project, we are now calling Baldwin 6 because we understand that there's a great opportunity for confusion with all the different projects that you have been reviewing recently. So, the Baldwin 6 project will have basic solar components, and I suspect that probably most of you are already aware of most of these. Most of the components will be above ground, including single-axis trackers. And so this project in particular will have tables of solar panels that tilt from the east to the west, tracking the sun throughout the day, instead of fixed mounted at the same angle all the time. So these are more efficient panels because it's tracking the sun throughout the day. Of course, the PV panels that will be on the racks, inverters and transformers on the slabs, power poles, lines, gravel roads, and associated with the entire project, stormwater management practices. This project in particular, says here 5 megawatts AC. That's actually rounded up. It's 4.95. It has to be under 5. And so it is a project that's designed to meet the net energy billing standards in the state of Maine. Again, the components that I just went through, the total developed area or area to be disturbed will be approximately 40 acres. The anticipated lifetime of the project will be 40 years. Point of interconnection will be right on the clock at 113. Trail, going right into the CNT power lines that are right there on 113. In addition to preparing our permit application for the town of Baldwin, we've been preparing our state permit application to the DEP, and we expect to file that in the first week of June or so. Anticipated construction of the project will be second quarter of 2022. And if you go to, let's see, we're at page 6, you can see kind of an overview map of the project. And we have another map that shows greater detail of how the project is laid out. But this shows the boundaries of the project here. And the other thing that is shown on this map is the natural resources. And so we have the wetlands that are surveyed around the area, ponds, vernal pools are all identified in here. And the project's been specifically designed to avoid and have the least impact on natural resources as much as possible. Yes, go ahead and page 7.
Sure. So just sort of, as you're looking at the natural resource map, really sort of like a big wetland complex on the east side of the site, a stream that kind of flows through that big forested wetland. On the north of it, there are 2 vernal pools that meet the significant criteria to be considered significant vernal pools by the state. Basically, that is productivity count, the pay mass count, the productivity of pools. There's 2 other significant vernal pools on the west side of the site, and the 2 small isolated wetlands. So, basically, what we've done is we've applied the state standard 250-foot buffer around those significant vernal pools. So, a little bit of the background in terms of what we do for natural resource work. Before we go out into the field, we consult with the agencies, so Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife, the Maine Natural Areas Program, I would say this one wrong, the Maine Heritage, MHPC. I would say it wrong. But that's for cultural resources. Maine Historic Preservation Commission, I always say committee, yeah. So we do our outreach with them. The information we get back kind of informs our surveys and how we approach the work out there. So we heard from them that there was a massive zero-wintering area on the northwest side of the site. So that was included in our field investigation. The site is pretty It kind of comes up on every, it's basically a hit for pretty much every time you go out for, agency review, but good to know, and we will be doing those surveys this summer. The majority of our surveys happened last spring and last fall and over last summer, but that's kind of one more checkbox to do, but we'll be doing that. And then really sort of the final step here is, we compile all our data from the field, and, because this is such a small project, it was kind of the goal to, avoid impact to resources as much as possible, and really it turns out, the design that you guys are looking at, there's no proposed wetland fill, there's no stream crossing, there's no proposed impact to wetlands, so we're not going to be applying for federal permits because we're not triggering any federal jurisdiction, and we're not going to be applying for a Natural Resources Protection Act permit. So the only state permit we're doing is site law. And that's kind of, actually, if you flip to the next page or look at this kind of big screen shot that I showed you, the big one, all these little dotted lines around the vernal pools that I pointed out. I'm sorry, I just misspoke that. There's only one significant pool on the west side. But anyway, those dotted lines around the significant vernal pools, that's that 250-foot buffer that we're applying. And then the other thing you'll notice is the purple dotted line, and that is the town of Baldwin shoreline zone, not shoreline zone. So the project has also been designed to be outside of any match shoreline zone.
I'm not seeing the purple line.
Maybe it's purple. It's not on this one. You'll have to look down.
That's why I couldn't see
This
it.
one.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, it is. I would call that purple.
Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay.
250-foot setback from significant vernal pools.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
So yeah, we're aware of the town's new rules around shoreline zone in terms of being able to do resource investigations and kind of make determinations on a case-by-case basis. But when we put the shoreline zone map with our design, it just took a couple small tweaks to be outside of it. So we figured why not. I think that's it for natural resource stuff.
So I'm just going to hit on some of the project highlights. The project will really be, outside lines, low visibility. If you go back and look at the map, you notice that most of the disturbed area, most of the cleared area, are actually back pretty far from the property lines, most of the property lines, and so there'll be existing vegetation screening. During the wintertime, it's likely that you'll just barely be able to see through the woods as you go up to 113 and be able to see some of the panels, but even that, there'll be vegetative screening locked in place between the roads, and so it won't be highly visible. This project, and all of the projects, really are quite quiet. The only instruments that really make any kind of sound in the project is the transformers, and they'll be actually out amongst the solar panels and in the field to make a soft hum. Once you get to the boundary of the project, it's very difficult to hear, and that hum only is made during the day when the sun is out and power is being generated. So, low environmental impact. Are not planning on doing any major earthwork for the construction, and really allowing the project to fit in with the existing terrain. Once we establish the project and we've built everything, all of the area in and around the panels and around the fenced-in area will be planted with a conservation seed mix, and so it will be maintained as a meadow underneath the panels and in and around the panels. There's no lots of wetland, as Caitlin mentioned earlier, no impact on wetland into this development at all. Again, I'm sure you're all very aware of this, but the project won't require any municipal services at all. So no water, no sewer, won't use any other town services, and it will create an increased tax base for the town.
Could we look at that a little bit?
Sure.
Because I have heard from people all kinds of different things on the taxing, what you contribute. I've heard that under 5 megawatt plants are charities. I've heard that word a number of times in public meetings. So,
Well, they're not technically charities. Up until now, these projects, that fit under the classification, are tax exempt, locally tax exempt. That being said, both the Governor's Energy Office is working with the legislature, and they are working for a way to break that. Regardless of how that policy unfolds, we expect that most likely in the next legislative session in the fall, they'll address that. They've decided that they have too much to address this year, this spring going on. Regardless of how that unfolds, we as a company, and we will include this in our permit application to you and in writing, we as a company will commit to paying a minimum of $2,000 per megawatt. We expect that actually that's what the policy will end up coming out of the state of Maine. But regardless of what comes out, we will pay a minimum of $2,000 a megawatt. Even if the project is exempt, we will still make that payment. And that'll be an increased payment of 2% every year. So if the $2,000 per megawatt required from the state of Maine allows for depreciation, we won't depreciate. We'll continue to increase 2% every year going forward. If the tax policy ends up being more than $2,000 per megawatt, then of course we'll need that because they'll be obliged to use that.
who are you paying that to?
To the town of Bolton.
Appreciate that. I appreciate the answer. Thank you. In other words, you will do, that's your minimum.
That's our minimum.
That's great. Thank you.
We understand that it's an issue, and we just wanted to proactively address that, and we have it all of our other projects.
Great.
Thank you, everyone. Yes?
Yeah, I just got a question about the decommissioning costs. It says it will be fully funded. How do you guys plan on that part of it?
So the DEP requires us to put together a full decommissioning plan, if we will, and we have to have that fully funded before the start of construction, and that'll be through either a bond or another form of security acceptable to the state of Maine.
Okay, and I'll be payable to the DEP, correct? Is that what we do typically?
Well, I don't believe that Bolton currently has any standard that requires decommissioning. If you do, then the state law allows local requirements to trump the state requirements, and then the town would hold on. But if the town does not have those requirements, then the state holds that bond. One note on the decommissioning plans are required to be updated every 5 years, to keep up with any kind of changes in the market, and that financial security needs to be updated each time that happens as well.
And so that would fall within right from day one.
Before we start construction, that is a requirement area. I've lost track of what you're thinking.
Well, they both ask questions about the next couple of slides. You're ahead of the game.
You want to cover civil engineering or you want me to?
I can do that.
Okay.
Basically, the way these projects are designed is that the stormwater treatment is that meadow habitat that Paul was talking about. So the grass is planted under the channels, acts as stormwater treatment for most of the site. This project will have a couple level spreaders and one detention pond, but it should be pretty minimal in terms of stormwater treatment. That's also going to be part of our site law application, that's meeting the requirements.
What's a level spreader?
A level spreader is correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, so water will come into like a ditch turnout, and then it allows water to overflow out of like a ditch turnout and kind of disperse, and like instead of like a channel, like flowing off of the site and creating, a channel or a stream on the site, it will overflow on a berm and kind of spread out the water, so.
Like a beach view kind of thing, or kind of creates like.
Well, it's on the surface.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yes, but it
Yeah,
causes the water to spread out rather than run down a channel and,
and create erosion and rills and sedimentation and runoff outside.
Greg, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, what we're trying to accomplish is just get the water back into a sheet flow, instead of a concentration. So, the think of it is, instead of a river or a stream or a tributary that are going down, causing more erosion flow, you have it sheet out across a wire, sort of a 20-foot zone. Instead of having a really concentrated amount of water, that water is now sheet flow across a greater area, which slows down the velocity and allows for that erosion flow and less sort of sediment into the surface.
Yeah, does that make sense? No? I want to go,
I don't know what you're talking about, like a river delta.
No, so,
Series of
yeah,
channels.
picture like a ditch on the side of the road. The water runs down the ditch, it creates erosion, and the ditch gets further, more and more ditchy. A level spreader the water will kind of turn out of that ditch and fill, it's like almost a small basin, but not quite, it's not really a basin. And the water kind of, once it gets to a certain point in that ditch turnout, it flows over like a rock berm, typically is what they use, and instead of flowing in a channel like it will overflow and kind of spread out the top.
Do you show where these level spreaders are on the map?
It will be in the details. So when we submit our site law application, the town gets a copy of that. So you'll have all of the construction details, all of the sediment erosion control plan details for during construction and the level spreaders. Stormwater control will be in there. Yep.
I also have a lot of pictures of the application to get closer to,
Oh, really?
see more realistic, version of what we're doing.
Which are not level spreader. They are. Yeah, I can share some pictures. That's a good idea, Greg.
Yeah, I can definitely do that, I put that together.
I use the word ditch turnout on there. And so then the other part of the stormwater control is the during construction stormwater control. And that's mostly captured in the sediment erosion control plan as a requirement of the site law permit. So there will be details for that. And, actually, we had, I don't know how to explain it, but it should be. Greg, I don't know, do you have anything else to add, I guess, for sediment erosion control?
I mean, the sediment erosion control is the normal sort of stuff that you can see on a construction project, program control, like a silt cement or a straw wall, different types of mulch, temporary seeding, temporary sedimentation basins, a lot of stuff like that.
And then just to add to that, because this is a site law project, being permitted to the state, they will require a third-party inspector that will come and inspect the site during construction to make sure it's within compliance with all of the things it's committed to for stormwater. And then the other thing I have on here is that the soil surveys, that's the other, one more thing that we have to do this summer is a soil survey, and that's going to, provide a little more granular detail for the stormwater control plan.
And it's worth noting that the studies that are happening this summer, both the botanical and the storm and the soil surveys are really intended to validate what we already have, and we're allowed to submit our permit application to the DEP, and as long as we can come back and validate that the design still fits in with the results of the survey.
When did you plan to submit your, to the DEP?
During the first week of June. decommissioning, I think we've already, covered. Does anybody have any final questions on that? Skip over to simple benefits. So we already talked about the taxes on slide 12. The other thing that we do with all our projects is we invite local schools to come in and visit the project a couple of times a year. And if we need to split that up so that different classes can do that, then we always, work cooperatively with that. And, it seems like a small thing, but we really take a lot of pride in that. Solar project is a great classroom for a whole variety of different explorations, technical, electrical, mechanical, as well as environmental. And so, teachers really enjoy that opportunity to come in and utilize that as a laboratory, if you will. Yes?
What's the difference between the taxes that you pay and the community benefit payments?
So if, and because it's so uncertain, it's hard to say, but if the state came back and said, taxes should be $1,500 per megawatt, then we would end up committing to an agreement with the town, or paying the $1,500 per megawatt, and then we will pay that balance of the additional $500 per megawatt in a community benefit agreement with the town. And so we'll structure the appropriate legal agreement, whether or not that may include a pilot agreement or tax increment financing. Probably a pilot agreement would be the most reasonable vehicle to use.
So this may be getting technical. We're talking about taxes on what Maine calls certain property. What happens to the dirt, the tax on the dirt? The James Payne already.
Yeah, James pay that. He's the landowner. He owns some real estate. He continues to pay their real estate taxes. We pay any increase on taxes, so I think because of all the cutting, he's no longer in tree growth. But for example, if he was on tree growth and he was taking it out, we pay the penalty on that, and he pays the underlying real estate taxes. Then we pay the assessment on all of the equipment that is on the project itself.
Okay. Great, thanks.
Environmental benefits, there's a lot of really good economic benefits to landowners in the town, but also the environmental benefits should not be overlooked. This will be enough electricity to power about 1,600 homes in the state of Maine. It will reduce the carbon, or replace as much carbon as approximately 1,000 cars operating over a year, and it's equal to the amount of carbon sequestered in a year from about 5,800 acres of forest.
What I don't see on here is how you're going to get the electricity from here to my house. Which is right here. Just by the extension cord.
Through your CMP bill.
So, one of the things we've asked other applicants to show us is what is the lease area? Give us a blue line showing the lease area.
So the way our contracts work, and I don't know if this is standard for everybody else who's come forward to you.
Right.
But the way our contracts work, we start with leasing the entire parcel. And one of the reasons we do that is because we want to make sure we don't trigger any type of subdivision prior to designing and building the project. Then, once we have built the project, we come in and we have surveyors come in and they survey what we call the as-built area. And so that's basically everything just outside the fence line, including any setbacks that are included. And then we reduce the leased area to that as-built. So essentially, that leased area that you're asking about, that's going to be just approximately where you see this line going all the way around the project. That will be the reduced leased area, and that will be the final recorded lease with Jay. Approximately.
So that's your trees that might, danger trees or shade trees or whatever, that'll take care of all that.
Yes, we do have, if there's something that's beyond that lease area, we do have rights within the agreement to go into adjacent land to trim if we need to.
Okay. That's interesting because we have normally we've given conditional use permits and know what land they're for. And this is one of the things as we go into this electrical generating, it's a little different, because usually it's, the applicant has a deed or a lease for the whole area, or a defined area coming to us.
So we do have title right and interest to do the project as situated, as illustrated, and actually beyond. We have title right and interest beyond what you currently see on the map.
Yeah.
But then, once we build the project, that'll be reduced down to approximately the boundaries that you see currently on the map.
So, go ahead.
What are you trying to get at is, so we're granting a conditional use permit for a parcel of property. And so the question is, what is that parcel or piece of property? Like, is it 20 acres? Is it 10 acres? Is it 50 acres? And so, because if it's, so for instance, if you're only leasing the fence line, then technically you're not leasing the area between the road and the fence line. So when you assert to us that there'll be a vegetative barrier there, well, that's outside the scope of the conditional use permit, because the conditional use permit is for a particular area, which typically would be the fenced area, because that's the area of use. So we just have to kind of work with these concepts to understand whether or not we have to expand the CUP to include things like that zone there, even though it may not be in the leasehold.
It will be in the lease, and so I meant to say, if I didn't say it, just beyond the fenced-in area, and again, the way I understand, and the way we structure our lease is the limit of the constructed area plus any required setback. So if the town requires a setback from the property line, then that setback is included in the lease with Jamie, so that the maintenance of the buffer in that area is considered. Likewise, the setbacks that are required from the normal pools, from any stream, all of those are included in our final lease.
Just a time check, we have about 10 minutes left, that we're dedicating to, the wall one, and we want to get to Sebago Road. This is just kind of an introductory, and then we'll schedule a fuller review a little later.
We're getting this. What you need to do is schedule a public hearing. I mean, I think that these people are just about ready. Yeah. Just a point from experience on the board. On the northerly point, if you were to lease all the way to the property line, you'd be doing Jamie a big favor, because you would make the subdivision then, and he in 5 years would get to do either side of that.
I'm not entirely sure I follow you, but we can.
Yeah, it's
Just
just
a follow-up.
something,
Yeah.
it's something new. That's my major question as far as the land. How do we figure that out? Maybe we have to figure out Danny. How do we help Danny? But how are we going to structure a conditional use permit where we don't know what the final shape of the property is?
So my suggestion is, and this is basically what all other towns and the DEP do, is they are providing a permit for the envelope that you are seeing on the plan, which says you're providing a permit that allows us to do everything as detailed in the plan and nothing beyond what is detailed in the plan. And so we can't go outside those boundaries of what. So you're approving the site plan. Now, we might shift equipment around inside of that envelope, but we're not allowed to go outside of that envelope and do the additional activity.
So what I want, maybe David doesn't, but I do is, I want to see that envelope in a very hard line.
Okay, understood. we'll make note of that, make sure that that's clearly identified.
30 years from now, you and I won't be here, and somebody's gonna wanna put in a subdivision.
No, we're gonna have you sitting right here to learn,
We'll make sure that's clearly marked in the sixth thing.
Great.
Don, Tracy, do you have any, comments or questions?
What's the question?
When do they get the final construction plans?
That will be, yeah, we'll be submitted by law application, which is in the next week. You'll get a hard copy of that.
No, I sent a link out. Yeah.
We also have hard copies. Okay. This is also. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
You could open the link. Yeah, it is, yeah.
It'd be supposed to be a code that came back to me.
I
never got the code, and, you know.
You'll have a hard copy. You'll have a hard copy you can read at home tonight.
You've got time with it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
David?
Well, we've gone through the whole system in tax study with IDA.
Well, they're not gonna be, there's not gonna be a whole lot of traffic.
So the one thing we'll update is the lease area.
Any more questions?
Talk with us a little bit about the two entrances. There's an existing entrance off of 113, but there is no existing entrance off of.
So this is the tie to the power line. It's going to pole 236, and then we'll be coming up Beacon Road, and the entrance to the project will be off of Beacon Road.
Even after it's up, because there is a driveway and a parking lot, and staging area off of Beacon Road into this property.
And we're going to ignore that. We're not utilizing it for part of the project, we're not reinforcing that. Because it's, safer and,
For the logging.
well, through our family, we've decided that it's safer and, easier for us to come in, off of Beacon Road and use that.
So, one of the things that, I would want to know as a butter, but also ask a question, as a board member, is that Beacon Road is a dirt road, and it is not in good shape. It was put in 2006, and the town just doesn't have the time or the money to maintain it well. It is beaten down, so that you have big boulders coming up through it. At this crossing, right here, the road is, totally, and the other thing is, when we talk about runoff, every time we have heavy rains, it kind of turns into a creek, and I gotta get on the second phone with Brian and say, dump some more, rock and dirt on it and stuff, so this is not a road that is built for, heavy traffic. Will there be any traffic driving down past this?
Not past that entrance, no, because there's no access point further up. So this is as far as we'll be going, and right now, is there any reinforcement that's already, considered for Beacon Road?
We haven't recommended that quite yet, I do know that we already got a lot of folks in there during construction, and I imagine that will happen in that area as needed to facilitate that. Work with the landowners to make that work.
Yeah, so I don't want to personalize this, but what I would ask is that you work with Brian Anderson, who is the road commissioner for Baldwin in terms of, you know, cutting. It's not like you have to get a curb permit, like when you get to the DEP, but coordinate, what you're doing there and the maintenance and everything on the Deacon Road and Brian.
And one of my suggestions to you actually is that in one of the conditions in the conditional use permit be that, we, prepare the road appropriate to the level of use that we're going to have and, maintain it during construction and leave it in as found or better condition. And we'd be glad to comply with that.
So I've already had some problems with people involved in doing the work on this, that they pull on the Deacon Road and then they just park there. It's a dirt road, we don't have room to park there and get around and stuff, and when you're trying to pull off the road and you have a lot of pulling water trucks, you can't, you know, all of a sudden stop because you can't, you know, get it. So, it's a tight thing.
Understood.
So, that's enough from that. Anything else, David, Matt, Joe?
Maybe it's a little bit stronger than crazy work with the road commissioner, it's kind of happy, like, they can't do any work on public roads without state permission, so.
Yeah.
It is to have them at the, we would say, to begin to have them out there for a second, if we could get them.
What's this existing trail up there, the T's on Beacon Road, is that?
That's Beacon Road is what used to be, it's abandoned.
Is that Town Road?
Yes.
Town Farm Road is
Interesting point.
That's kind of a question we have too, is, our surveyor had trouble figuring out whether or not it was officially decommissioned. It seems that it's been abandoned and is no longer,
Now, we don't abandon anything.
yeah, exactly.
They can put it on the shelf and ready to use.
Beacon Road has been, but the only part of Town Farm Road that has been is the part that goes on the other side of Beacon Road.
What is Town Farm Road still maintained?
Wait, put that, you said Beacon Road is what?
Beacon Road has been abandoned and is not maintained by the town.
The Beacon Road is not a town road?
No, just from,
Up to.
just from right here where,
From the T
yes.
to 113?
Yeah.
In the other direction.
So what part has been decommissioned or is no longer a town road? Is it going up to that, past the T?
If it ever was a town road.
Okay. So then we have, okay, let's make sure I've got what you said. And then when we get to the Town Farm Road, you say it is or is not decommissioned?
There's a Town Farm Road goes like this, you can see it, but there's a path that goes from Beacon Road out to 113 through the wetlands and everything, and that, it's not maintained.
Town Farm Road is still a town farm, or a town road,
Yes.
although it's not maintained much, it's,
Oh, you have a gate and locks on it and everything? Yeah, there's a town gate and
has
everything.
not been decommissioned, and I see that this site used to go across it.
Bob and Dwight are selected.
Okay.
Okay, so Bob speaks with authority.
So I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed.
I mean, he has additional land, so, you know, given the, investment in the property, I could certainly envision them rerouting the road around the project and making it just as nice as it is today.
And that would be our suggestion. Again, as Caitlin said, there was a little bit of ambiguity about whether or not that road was decommissioned, and we had the assumption that it was. But if it still is a right of way, then our our next proposition to the town would be to identify a bypass, and, you know, we would work to create that bypass and come to a full.
I'm sure you would have.
Town,
Because
The issue is that it's.
I had a land issue with, somebody there, and I went to the Historical Society, and I went through every town record and, annual meeting back to the 20s, as long as they had them, to look for any kind of ruling that it was abandoned.
That's what our surveyor said you would have to do.
And it has not been.
Okay.
And it's the access to town property that's beyond it, which is town farm. Or used to be a town.
Well, so who controls the road? In the sense that if there was a change, it would be the selectmen, not us. Like, we don't have any authority over the town road. That's the selectmen, right?
Yeah, and I'm not sure what authority specifically he has versus the legislative body of the town meeting.
Right.
So we'd have to research that and figure out if you wanted to move the road or if you want to.
Yeah, we've identified it as an issue, and we'll have some more dialogue on it. So that we can, get to, Sebago and A35, Paradigm. Let's, decide what the next steps are for Baldwin 6. Do we want to have some more dialogue with them before we set up a site walk and a public hearing?
They've got some work to do. They've got some work to do.
Okay. So, we'll put you on a future agenda, and we'll have some more dialogue.
During the couple weeks, yes.
On the point where we feel that some of the issues have been resolved, and, okay to, schedule.
Yeah, and maybe we can follow up so that we don't take too much time, but I would like to be able to get clear notes on the work that we need to do, not denying that we have some to do, but other than on the road, I'm not too sure if there are any other outstanding issues.
The delineation of exactly what it is we're talking about.
Okay.
That's about it. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against having a sidewalk.
I'm not against.
We can most definitely prepare the boundaries for you, well, in advance to it here, or the sidewalk. The town road, I think that's gonna be a longer term,
But I don't think we're, yeah, I mean, how do we consider CDP? Is the town road in the middle of it, and you haven't got that straightened out, that's under the conditions.
Right, but if it materially changes the structure of the project, then we feel required to have a sidewalk, so. Mr. Chair, I maybe suggest that we give them 2 weeks to talk to the selectmen, to see if they can get some preliminary idea, and then have somebody come back next time just to kind of give us a report on the town road, and if it sounds like they made progress, then we can schedule a sidewalk for next time.
Have you on the agenda for next time, and, work with folks to try and resolve the issue, particularly the selectmen. And we'll, help out, however we can.
Sounds good. All right, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, folks.
Yeah.
And thank you for bringing all the copies, Caitlin. By the way, Caitlin is a certified wetland scientist, which we had to ask the, last one to make sure that they had a certified wetland scientist at the public hearing and things like that, so.
And an excellent field hockey player, too.
You're Googling or something?
I Google everybody.
I feel good.
I enjoyed the, what was it, the hiking and skiing, I don't remember, where you actually hike the ski at the club.
Oh, yeah. It's good. I'm all over you.
I won't preach that anymore.
I was a little freaked out, you know.
You guys don't have to, Jay, don't feel blind.
No, very good.
Thank you, Paul, thank you, very much. So this is Adrian Pine from Paradigm.
Yes.
And
I'm Andrew Keller from NH Solar Garden.
sorry about that.
Thank you so much for
tonight.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
You can get a top line and,
The good news is that these great folks just did all the hard work. Andrew Keller from NH Solar Garden. And I'm actually, I know Jack, one of the founders of Walden, very well. He and I were in the biofuel business many, many years ago. So I always get nervous when I come in front of the board and somebody else in the industry who goes ahead of us. We don't know what type of quality they have, but his organization is more than that. So I can say that about Jack, who I know. Hopefully more for
And then we have some extra copies if anyone wants to publish one.
It's the whole thing, yeah.
Right.
Thank you very much.
So again, thank you to the board, for having us and providing us the last minute, to the audience for listening in and any questions that they might have. Again, my name is Andrew Keller, from NH Solar Garden. And, I've been in the solar business for about, 11 years now. Most of my work I've done is throughout, all of New England. And my company, I'm here with my wife as well, who also works with me. So we are, husband and wife team that develops these projects, takes them to a point where we then have other investors that work with us that own the project for the long term. We also own some of our projects as well, and we've been working around New England, specifically New Hampshire. We've done some first projects, large-scale projects in New Hampshire. We followed Jack's path in the wind world that he was in. He did one of the first really good wind projects in New Hampshire, and we did one of the first landfill projects in New Hampshire. That was the first ever permanent project on the Cap Management. We then proceeded to do a couple more in New Hampshire. So we have some experience in kind of being the first in some of these markets. We didn't have to be the first tonight, thanks to you guys, so we appreciate that again. So hopefully a lot of the questions that were asked, we won't want to be, related what they had to say, but the good news is a lot of the details that were shared are very consistent. There are some details about our project that are unique and special and small. Our project is smaller in size, so we will be sure to some of the same requirements that may be necessary for some of these larger projects. So, Adrian will be able to talk you through any of the technical details, any of the specific solar-related questions I'm happy to, answer, and help the board understand more about what we're looking to do. And I think our ultimate ask after this meeting would be whatever feedback the board gives us. We can go back to the drawing board, make sure that our plans are complete and ready to go, and come back forward next available, public hearing, the board goes appropriate for. So I'll hand it over to David to kind of take it through, and I'll kind of stand aside and be ready to answer any questions.
All right, thanks. Adrian Pine, I'm at Paradigm Consultants, and I'm going to walk you through the site and the project. You all have a nice 17 site plan. I do have some larger copies if anyone from the board wants to take one after, but I'll kind of walk you through all this plan. So this is the project site. Kind of a strange shape, but it's made up of 2 lots. And it's accessed off of Carl Burnell Road. Currently, there is an existing gravel road that comes up onto the site here and winds around up to this area. So we're kind of utilizing some existing gravel infrastructure to get to our site. The project site is Forest Kid, and so is surrounding sites. Some of on Brunel. So the stream waters down there, and then crossing for another.
Sometimes over it, right? That's the one I think that I was, sometimes it actually goes over the road.
Oh, maybe. There's also a small tributary coming into that at the top here, and some wetlands, in this area that connect into the stream. So we wanted to avoid that area with our project, and are proposing a solar array to be on this higher area of the property. There are no wetlands in this area, in the stream, no vernal pools. It's higher up, it's flatter and drier. And so that was kind of how we decided where the solar array would be on site. It's well away from the property line, we saw the setback. The fence line is at least 75 feet away from all of the property lines here. And the access road for this, there's a few options. So that was kind of one of the pieces that we don't have finalized tonight, and we're working on an easement with the abutter. And there's two options, so I'll go through those. So the first option is using this existing road location for access, improving it to the standards that are needed to get in here for the solar use. Currently that road crosses over the property line right at the corner here. And so we would need an easement over this corner in order to keep the road in the same place as it is today and improve it. And then we would continue to follow the existing road. We would have a small wetland impact if we kept that location. And then finalize the high part of the parcel where the solar array is. That road also does have a stream crossing of Gulf Brook. That's only an existing location where there currently is a stream crossing, so it would be the same location, just improved and meet all of the Army Corps of Engineers and ACP requirements for a stream crossing. That's option one. Option two would be the same butter has a gravel road on their lot already that comes up to about here, a little more than halfway through their parcel. And then, or maybe even further, we would just extend, we would utilize that, have an easement over it, and then extend from the end of it across the property line to this same location. So the solar array would be in the same location, either way. And then, kind of the third option is using the existing road location of staying on the property and not having any easement on the water. But the problem there is we would be getting closer to Gulf Brook, which we would like to avoid. So that's possible, but it's more permitting with the state and not ideal overall. So we are planning to avoid that. Yeah. And then as far as kind of develop size and permitting with the state, this project is a lot smaller than the one you just heard about. Under 20 acres, so it's not triggering the site law permitting. And it also has less than an acre of impervious area, so it doesn't require as much stormwater permitting either. We will be submitting for stormwater permit by rule to the DEP, which requires erosion control practices that are typical for construction and post-construction. And then, depending on the route that the road takes, you may have some wetland impacts and stream crossings that would also go through DEP. But our wetland impacts are actually less than 4,000 square feet if we do go that route. So it would be only the Army Corps of Engineers that would be concerned with that.
How many megawatts?
4.5.
4.5 megawatts?
And then,
how did you fit 4.5 megawatts into under 20 acres when the other people who come in front of us haven't been able to do that? What did you do?
Environmental costs, you can't
Yeah, you're good at what you do.
We're gonna put that.
Yeah. Is it-
Yeah, so it's just, it's the design that we worked on, you know, with our site design folks, to make sure it's an accurate site, and to make sure that, as described, how we make sure that we understand those impacts under 20 acres, and make sure that we calculate that accordingly, you know, with our road and our tree clearing and stuff, so she's been able to make sure that we stay under that, off of that radar, because we really didn't want to trigger that, you know, longer permit process, so we designed it on purpose to stay off the road.
Do you have like a standard rack system, or do you have?
This is a big deal. This is the difference between the two projects we've heard about. You know, they have the panels that move, and we have the big deal. So our spacing around our panels, we don't need as much space.
And where's your interconnect?
So three phases right here. So there is some extension of the three phase that will come up for no road here. And then depending on our access being up through the abutter or up through this direction that we shared, that would be, you know, the point where we bring up the power to the site.
So the power will follow your trucks.
Yeah, and the access, yeah, you got it.
What's your timeline for resolving all of the moving parts about the roads, the butters, and rights of way, and all that other stuff? What?
We're over the next couple of weeks, we've been having that. We've been having some discussions with the abutter, like Indian shared. We do have, we prefer not to go the route through our property for the environmental purposes. We can, it will just extend our permitting process with the state, obviously, which we prefer not to go down that route if we can help it. So yeah, there has been a couple of conversations, but that would be our hope. We need to obviously confirm that way, if we need to design work to come back to the board and properly show the access and the design of the road. So our hope would be the next couple of weeks to get that wrapped up and then be able to come back at the soon as convenient to the board.
You're looking at an interconnect that's just on hold. You're not looking at a fenced-in area with, you're looking at just a pole and to connect to TNT.
Typically with TNT, they're going to require a certain amount of pole steps, so maybe 3 or 4 pole steps for the different equipment that comes off of the line.
Right.
So again, the 3 phase would be extended up the street, you know, about 1,800 feet, I think, roughly. And then we would bring it up through our site, and then up in this area here is where all of the equipment would be, the transformer, and then it would go into the site with the inverters and the panels and such. So, I mean, we follow the road that we have either this way or possibly this way. That might cut the distance a little bit, and we're going to shorten that distance here for the road upgrade. So that's the benefit of the project that we're trying to explore. But yeah, all of the equipment would be overhead, all up to here, and then we would just follow the engineering requirements that TNT requires of us to interconnect with their standards of ours, and then go into the project from there.
So you are leasing this or are you owning it, the property?
So we have a land partner who owns the land, he owns this property, and he owns this property.
Okay.
So we are only looking to lease, we lease 5 megawatts, so we come into a project and we define our lease terms based on megawatt on acreage. And as I think I heard with the other applicant, you would like to see the definition of the footprint, as you can kind of see, this represents our kind of fence line. You know, that's usually about 15 feet off the edge of the panel. Each side of the fence line, you're about 15 feet off. And then the perimeter outside of the fence line will be dictated by types of trees and what type of setback needs for the solar shading.
The complication for our successors is that if you don't define that, what happens when, you know, there's more land use pressure involved and somebody wants to do something next to it and, you know, there's some sort of conflict. We want to know what that line is.
Yep, we can look at that on the plan, have a more detailed plan.
Part of our lease, not unlike the other one, but we define the access, define the, you know, terms of where the tree would be cleared for shading purposes, so that all on in the leaf itself. And or if there was a separate, active easement that was required to the butter, that'd be a separate, legal process that we would, have and make sure there was, survey details to provide as part of the, part of the active easement.
Is there any chance the footprint of the array is going to expand?
No. As I said earlier, by design, based on timing and the cycle of what we'd like to see happen with our project, there's this trade-off, I think, for different projects. You can go a little bit bigger, you might trigger that like application process that might be built in, with some projects that we were looking that we might get to scale, and that's just, we built it into the schedule. Most of our projects, we have 5 projects in Maine that we're working on currently, they're all in the same places. This project, we were waiting for vertical season funds to be actively identified and see what the impact was for the project. But we designed with the schedule in mind, and so not to, hit that sort of, process.
And is the expectation that you're going to build this, or are you going to develop it yourself?
So we're the developer, so we do sell it to one of our partners who's a long-term holder of these assets.
Before or after development?
Before. We own the smaller projects. We're a smaller team. We're just under the white team. So we like to own smaller projects, rooftop projects. We actually own a project on a fire department in one of our towns in New Hampshire, located in Brooklyn, New Hampshire. So we own projects like that. We're not big enough to own the bigger projects.
So are you Solar Road, Sebago Road, Solar LLC?
Yeah.
That's you?
Yeah. And just for the board, we've done that, but I guess I'm a little, don't get embarrassed, but when we originally started working on this project, we were going to be over here. Because our landlord owned both pieces of land. And this was our original location, which abuts Sebago Road. So we try to keep our LLCs somewhat consistent, so we know what they are, and our future owners can know where they are. Unfortunately, it was already filed, we had our registration with the state, both states, we just said, Sebago Road, solar and all.
Oh, yeah.
Could have been, Joe's solar, Joe's solar.
We have limited number here as well.
Right. Yeah, we can't do that in New Hampshire.
So, just on, I see a deed here from Richard Carey. So have you purchased the land already?
Yeah, just land and purchase.
That piece of land that you just out.
These two have been purchased by our client.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes all the way down to that place.
Yep.
And you also own the company that's going to be developing, and there's 2 different companies working here. So this is solar.
So, SOW Solar is the LLC that owns the land.
Okay.
That bought the land from the prior owner here.
Richard Carey.
Yeah. And then, NH Solar Garden, our company, Monetary Company, our developing company, and then we set up project-specific companies that we can then do all the permitting for the consistency between the names and the acquisition, the transaction, the project. So, try to keep that clean from the names. That's what we're seeing.
Did you guys dig test pits over in the other parcel before? Yeah, did you guys do any development in there at all?
No.
Yeah, and soil investigation over here.
Figure that.
Solar or?
Well, whoever has the land,
Solar.
unless Sebago Road Solar has a lead interest from Solar.
Yeah. It's data world.
Yeah, that's what they want.
But it can be spelled out easier.
Right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Alright. So I guess, we've kind of gone over everything, are interested in your feedback, because we are gonna work out these easements, pick a road location based on that, and fully design that and come back with, more, detailed plan, complete application, to get on the next meeting. So general feedback from the board, but also, if you had any comments about, keeping the road on the property, and the which is not our ideal situation, but, want to hear all comments on all options. Yep.
Going back to your, keep your access to the property, to get back to, how would you improve that road?
So we would not be impacting Goldsboro, but we would be getting closer to it than the existing gravel road, which is already, within the, 75-foot setback, and then we can reduce those setbacks to 25 feet with permitting through DEP. And in order to keep it outside that 25 feet, we need this easement. Because today, it's 50 feet away.
Seems like the impact within that 75 foot.
If we stayed on the property. Yeah, so we wouldn't be in the stream, we wouldn't be impacting the stream itself, but we wouldn't be in the setback. So it would be permitting for DEP. Yeah.
Further than that, extra 138 foot permit, right?
But you also have a straight crossing, right?
Yeah, so that's in here, and whether we use the easement at the corner or try to stay on the site, we would have that stream crossing. But that's a pretty standard permit in DEP, especially where there is an existing crossing at that location. We're just gonna be improving it, which is actually a better condition because we'll have, appropriate stabilization on the side slopes, the culverts designed to meet Army Corps of Engineers standards. So, we wouldn't, make sure we weren't backing up water or, causing any issues with, vegetation or habitat.
Do you know what the flow is and
I don't have detailed information on that now.
you see, that's probably putting the culvert
Right.
or something, I want to make sure that's capacity.
Right.
So,
Yep, so we'll study the watershed getting to that and come up with the design flows that are going to that location, beside that crossing by culvert.
That's still owned by Natasha James from the Veterans. That was this one, still owned by Natasha James from the Veterans.
I believe so, that's what it was,
Okay.
with the survey, that's what the name is. So, it just changed in the past. 6 months a year, maybe.
What's your point, Blake?
So what I was saying was that Carl Burnell Road is not a, maintained road during the winter. So, and I'm not sure it can handle heavy equipment during the construction phase. So, I guess I would be interested in, whether or not you were proposing any sort of improvement to, and discussing improvements is a modest word in this town, it comes to dirt road. But, any improvement to the portion of Carl Burnell Road that you're gonna use. I can speak for myself and say that I'd much rather you use the, easement across the abutter's property, but it makes the permit much more complex because we're going over multiple landowners and single CUP, which is pretty rare for us. So that would take some kind of thought to figure out how to deal with that. And so, but in terms of, it's a pretty steep road, so I'm surprised you can get too many trucks up that, but I presume it make it a little bit easier to drive. I'd rather see you get a direct route rather than going over Gulf Road, which is a pretty small stream. I think the culvert on Carl Burnell is about 2 inches.
We'll make it that.
Yeah. And it comes out of the road every couple of years.
Yeah, this is the ideal approach in terms of environmental impact and permitting with the state. And it would be within, recorded
I don't know, we'll have to think about it.
Yeah.
I don't think we've done it before, so.
Yeah. Well, we have that. I mean, I guess either way, we'll have also a little piece of an easement in the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was trading on like language around easements and property versus environmental. Our preference is to stay away from the environmental piece of it if we can, and just, you know, a legal question or a legal document that helps us or some consideration for the board to work through that. That would be our preference for, you know, the environmental.
Do we care about the width of the easement? Because we require, to build a house, we require a 60-foot wide easement. I don't know where to find that. Into the,
So for like a town road, you mean?
So you require to build a house is 60-foot wide easement to get into the house.
Okay.
For the easement on the driveway, correct?
Exactly.
64 probably.
Exactly.
Yeah, we had,
Which I think we got this was roughly 40 to 50 that's there now based on with the film.
yeah, we had planned a 40-foot easement because that would be enough to encompass, you know, the existing road, any road that we would extend off of it and any utility poles, and any grading that we need to do. So that would be enough to encompass any of the improvements done. But if there's a requirement to be wider for the town, we can, yeah, we can add that, into the discussion.
Why, is Carl Brunel maintained up to the driveway in your house on the corner?
No.
It's up to them?
It's up to them.
So that's a,
The only part of Calvinello where it gets plowed and really maintained is on the other side by Dave Landron's house, where it comes in and hits the V, comes back. Well, other than that, it isn't plowed, it's just a tournament.
This is unlike we have another site that's a similar situation where it's the homeowners are maintaining that road in the winter time. So, I don't think this is something that would just be part of our operations and maintenance plan, that I think we're going to be some detail we want to share with the board, to handle that, just as it's, you know, indoor, and especially if we have this easement coming across here, we probably part of our conversation with those and over there to make sure that, you know, we don't jeopardize or make more difficult for getting access to their side of the water.
You think they need 60 feet?
That's 60 feet easement, right away?
Yeah.
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 I think so. I think they need 60 foot wide.
okay. And for this one, I mean, that's not really like a road easement, that's just an easement, so.
You can have an easement and it doesn't have to be drivable.
Yeah.
It just has to be on paper.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, we got it.
Okay, so this one would have to be 62.
Well, you have to be able to have 60 feet. You have to have.
Right,
60
either
foot-
side.
Right, so if you're right up against, a setback,
Right.
you need more land, and if you weren't right up against the setback.
Yep.
You also have
Makes sense.
the Gordon Middleton rule. He's a sweet old man that's really upset because somebody built a driveway right up his property line. And the planning board approved the next town meeting with an ordinance that you had to build a road 10 feet away from the property line.
Where is that?
I don't know, I found it in here, it's in here, it's 10 feet. Probably under definitions, we're looking at this part, it's all here. Oh, okay. It's,
That subdivision.
Yeah, this road would be crossing the property line twice, so it's different.
It's a lady.
Yeah, they're off on a different ways.
Okay.
They're going down the road that you haven't traveled.
Yeah, we don't go around.
you can have an agreement with your neighbor. Okay, in the absence of a written agreement between the butters, the roadway shall be set back 10 feet from the neighbor's property. Gordon deserves that. He's a really nice guy who never offended anybody.
So what's the next, what's next, Mr. Chair?
Well, I guess you guys have to work out these issues.
Yep.
And then, get back in touch with us, through West, or, let us know when you're ready to represent, probably updated maps and materials, and, then you'll meet again, and, work through and review and move towards a, sidewalk and public hearing.
Okay. So,
It would be good, because this is just like a higher level review than we've had, on the last one. It would be good to have kind of that, PowerPoint presentation that talks about the taxes and the old, what's in it for the town hall, and stuff like that.
Yeah, we can't, I don't think we share together this project. We might have chosen out as well, but that would be getting us under. But one thing that is interesting about our project that we're looking at, my wife takes care of the board, we call it the Queen Bee, in our house for more than just one reason, but she's looking into pollinator and habitat stuff for these projects as well, so it would be kind of a bee pollination habitat, which is a big thing around the whole project. So it's kind of hot button issue, but it has a habitat as well that, we're looking into for our project. So that may not be something that's practical kids out, but we are trying to take it.
Does anybody have any, final questions or comments,
I just want to show him something on my phone here. Yes, that. So my tree stand is where you met. This is my house, okay, right here, yeah. And this is my tree stand, okay, and where is that?
You guys get that, LLC.
Wait, we're gonna push all the.
Project with the LLC.
We'll add half of that.
oh, yeah, I'm not sure,
Yeah.
because the LLC was in New Hampshire.
No, it was registered, that's board registration, we just had running information, that we do all that form registration.
That's sort of the second thing.
That's okay, more for you
Yeah.
to speak to, get a little bit out of this one. Yeah, I think it's in good standing.
Cool.
And so you said 50-foot right of way, you confirmed that you opt for this. Okay. I think that kind of answers my question. Do you have any more?
Yeah. No, we appreciate the board tonight, and you guys did a great job, obviously, they answered a lot of questions, but a lot of our answers have been very comprehensive as far as taxes, all the things that they, taxes are very important to us, and I think we're pretty aligned with what we hear from tax values in the town, which is a big number. And so these two projects are talking close to $20,000 a year with the tax revenue from these two projects.
Have you guys seen the, approval for the 3 other solar arrays in town?
No, my original intern who worked for me 10 years ago was the one who did most of the work. So I also take it for him and see if there's anything we can do to reject.
I'm thinking like what's over our standards.
Yeah, well, just, send me an email, and I'll send you the CC to see what we've done in the previous one. Stay with you if you want to send it to me.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great, we appreciate that. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, and thanks for putting us in.
Yeah, appreciate it.
The next item on the agenda, we wanted to reserve, 30 minutes to get started on, talking about the subdivision ordinance.
All right. You all have copies of the markup one? With the red marking on?
I have a copy of it.
Well, the forward is one, that hits. I don't have extra, I have one that I printed up at home, but, probably that you don't have something that you haven't looked at in advance, we probably should cut this short, and when you have something
can look at, that we can go through together to help. But I'll give you some.
Give us the highlight of it to preface for, what we really do.
Yeah, all right, so, the basis for the, revision was, we discovered that the state had a bunch of definitions that were in contradiction with what we had. And there was a law passed that said, by now we should have already passed a new subdivision ordinance. So we're working on, kind of a handout sheet that we posted on the town website that gives the current state, definitions. So that's why we're doing it. We have to do it. The state says we gotta do it. And in the markup, Joe and I worked on a committee that went through all the state, statutes and compared what the state said to what our subdivision ordinance said, and came up with those areas that need to be updated. And that's what I've done in this document. And I'll send it out again to whoever wants it.
I have it, I'll send a copy out to the whole board.
All right, so what it shows in there is, in the definitions area, there'll be a definition that we currently have, and right below it, all this in red, the state's definition. And you go through the whole thing. What you gotta do is, you as a board have to decide that you're going to, use those words. And so you need to go through it, and it'll be a process of crossing out, like, freshwater wetland. That's our definition. You take the state's freshwater definition, and use that. Yeah.
But we don't really have a choice, right?
You don't. But it's still something that you have to decide to do.
Right.
Because it's a town ordinance, right?
Right. So other than the definitions, are there other, please don't remember, are there other substantive changes?
Yeah, there are. And, well, I wouldn't say substantive. There are changes, and I've made a note here. Some of the languages regarding fees in the current, one are penciled in.
Yeah.
And that shouldn't be done.
Right. Oh, yeah. Where? That's an easy one, Bob.
It's kind of a no-no, you know, who knows whether it's a real ordinance or not, right?
Right.
So,
that's my memory.
So I've gone through and I've put in where it was penciled in what I understood to be what the real number should be.
By going back to the town meeting, it was.
By going to the original one. That's all I have to go by, is the original.
But yours are typed in.
This is adopted March 10th, 2001, and then it's got some pencils in.
Right.
I'm using the pencils in, and then after that, I typed in what I think it says.
Right.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I wonder if we should go back to the minutes of the town meeting where these were passed, just to be cautious. I think I have some of there was some issue with it a few years ago.
Yeah, it's a little bit squirrely sometimes when you try to read it, and so, that's one area I think that ought to be corrected.
Do I remember, Bob, that there were some places where we did have some choices? It was all diktat from the state.
Here's one. In addition, the applicant shall pay a fee of $50 per acre, whichever is greater. And then it said $15,000 after it. Yeah. And I think the 15,000 was a penciled-in number, but I don't know, exactly.
We have to deal with this exactly on changing the commons property.
And then there's some other places, I think where it says recharge to max of 15,000. There's several places in there, and,
I have a high-level question for the thought on this. The last time
well, let me just give one other area, and that is, if you get shoreline zoning ordinance stuff.
Yeah.
And I've gone through and looked at areas where our new shoreline zoning ordinance conflicted with this, and I put them in highlighted red, what I thought it should say.
In shoreline zone or in the subdivision?
In subdivision ordinance. So this should match the shoreline, our current shoreline zoning ordinance.
This makes what I was gonna say even more germane. And that is that when we redid the shoreline zoning ordinance, we hired Southern Maine Planning, whatever, to look through it, get it aligned with all the state rules and regs and everything like that. And I guess what I'm wondering is, do we need, or would it be wise to have the subdivision ordinance reviewed by Southern Maine Planning and Development, as they did with the shoreline zone? And you know, get an external subject matter expert recommendation on it.
Up to you. I have tried to make the references in here reflect what's the section in our shoreline zoning ordinance that are reflected. But if you want to hire somebody else to take a look at it, I mean, what you find is, as Joe said, this will put you to sleep real quick. Yeah. By the time you get through 3 or 4 pages and you're trying to match here or there, and you know, your eyes are starting to glaze over.
I would trust that Bob can do just as good a job as Southern Maine Regional Planning. Yes.
The other thing I would say is there's some areas in here that are not highlighted, I don't think, but our ordinance left some connotations off, like it should have said inches in the table or something that was just 3, so 3 inches. So I put the connotations in, as they should be. Here's one that says 35 F. I just put in degrees so that we know it's just an inch. So, that's pretty much it. And, there was a note that we get a thing from MMA that right now is running a series on things that town ordinances can and can't, or must do, or can't do. And one of them has to do with, subdivision. Let me see. I looked at it real quick, and I think we're okay. But they say subdivision plans require a land surveyor. We say it a couple different ways in there. Subdivision plans are required to be signed and sealed by a named licensed professional land surveyor. So I think it's in there in a couple of places. Something we should check for just to make sure.
What about comparing and contrasting with the land use ordinance? Are there any potential conflicts or areas with the land use ordinance and the subdivision ordinance that we need to think about? Because I know when we did the shoreline zoning ordinance, there were discrepancies between the shoreline zoning ordinance and the land use ordinance that we had to resolve.
To be honest with you, I haven't dug into the land use ordinance in great detail, other than this seems to supplant a lot of it. I mean, when you're into the subdivision ordinance, it seems to override a bunch of other things, you know.
It's like a separate ordinance. You put the land use ordinance back in the bag.
Right. Yeah. And I was surprised that there was so much shoreline zoning stuff in here.
And the land use ordinance, let's say somewhere in there, if it's in conflict with any other town ordinance, then the more restrictive ordinance applies.
But I didn't go into it in detail because my assumption is that once you get to a point of looking at a subdivision,
homework would be to review it, and then we'll put an agenda item on a future meeting where we'll have to, vote on the changes, or at least vote. The whole thing has to go before a town meeting, to have it adopted, right? Are we gonna do a special town meeting, or wait until, next year?
I think we're going to have a special town meeting this summer anyway, for tax purposes, but, it just depends on when you're ready. Maybe we could do that anytime.
Yeah, I mean, typically we don't like to have land use items on special town meetings because it's such a small faction of the community that show up for special town meetings that, somebody could change the ordinance to their own whim quite easily. This seems a little bit different because it seems like this is guided by state law and we don't have a lot of choices. So I would say once we go through it, if in fact we feel like all we're doing is changing it to comply with state law, I personally would be okay with a special town meeting because we don't have those problems. But typically we try not to do special town meetings with the plan.
Our job is to get ready to make that decision.
Matt, check. I think I sent you a PDF version and a Microsoft Word version.
Yes.
And the other thing I would recommend is that you start building a library of these ordinances in Word.
Yes.
Because I know in the past,
I got
sometimes people
all
modify them,
ordinances and I'm putting them all in there.
that we can't find something to type. So let's start all over.
Yeah. I'm doing that with the CUPs, like I had one that sent Bernadette and with the ordinances as well. So.
Okay.
Well, thank you for you and Joe for having done that arduous.
Well, did 99.8% of the work.
All right. Well, how long do people need to digest this if they have it electronically in their mailbox tomorrow?
Next meeting.
Next meeting, okay.
Let's do it. We might have a little lull here while these people get their acts together. They won't be taking a lot of time on this meeting.
Yeah. Okay, so we have that action item. Wes, CEO update, anything you want to talk to the board about where we're at or things that we need to make focus on you're working on?
I have a couple of comments to make. There's something specific you want to hear? Okay. There was a email going around about 2 weeks ago about a couple that bought the water tower down there across from business stop. They're calling it a perch. So I stopped and talked to them. It's got big greens. Yeah, not sure what they want to do, or be involved with a club or a community effort. They need money, people to join. They have no organization. I looked at the tower and I said, that's impossible. So we'll never have the money to do anything about it. How do you get people up there? They can't afford an elevator, stairs are not practical, so on and so forth. So right now, nothing's happening. Okay.
But they bought it.
Pardon?
They own it. They own the water tower, right?
They're young, they have good intentions, but, they can determine no money.
Yeah.
Nothing's gonna happen. I've had some complaints about, 79 Pigeon Brook Road. Marion Davis.
The people that live there, pardon, do they own that house or do they rent it?
Well, Marion Davis owns it. She's nurse fixing, she works for some, assisted living place in the way majority of the time of the week. Her son Richard Davis lives there, it seems like he has a lot of friends. within their trailers. I haven't researched it very well. I did stop last week, catching in the drive and talking for about 2 minutes. I had warned not to go there because there's drugs going on. The state police been there, the sheriff been there, and they haven't been able to do anything about it. So I just pulled stuff to the drive and talk to them. He may continue tonight and whatnot, but I didn't push the situation. I will revisit it again, but right now, seems like Richard Davis is running the show, and a lot of his friends are in junk trailers in the back of the property, and we can only guess their status. What else I got here? I had a phone call a couple days ago. One of the builders out on the Herzog subdivision, lot 1 on Sandtown Road, was asking about setbacks. It's a little confusing, or it was a little confusing. Things like the surveyed maps also show a delineation line of setbacks from the road of 75 feet and 10 feet aside and 25 feet in the back, which is fine. And so you say, well, there's wetland in the back corner, so you have to hold up 100 feet from that. He said, but the surveyor didn't show it on the map. I said, that doesn't matter, the surveyor showed the setback lines as by the ordinance and documentation that went through the planning board, and they signed it, and that's all involved there. As far as the water goes, it's the ordinance, and I look at it, I enforce what the ordinance says. So I said, in the rural zone, it says 100-foot setback. He said, well, the ordinance says 75 feet. So we started researching. He was going around the ordinance on the internet, and I had my book. Well, it turns out the ordinance on the internet is dated March of 2018, and my ordinance is dated March of 2017. And my ordinance says 100 feet, and that's what I used when we were doing the shoreline zone that had 75 feet setback from the street. So I said, why don't we all just make it all 100 feet, all the same, so that the stream setback and the shoreline zone and the water setback and the road is all the same. It's fine, so it's 200 feet. Somehow, we had 100 feet shoreline zone, and now this ordinance on the internet says 75 feet. And I don't know how it got changed. So that's the question, how to get changed, My ordinance says in 2017, islands 50 feet rural and village commercial 100 feet. And on the one on the net, it says 75 feet for all the zones, all the districts. So
This is that issue.
somehow it got changed.
Trying to sort out the last time, David, remember?
So, what was the discussion? Now, I just make it aware that there's a difference there.
Well, 100 feet over the rules of 75 feet, because if there's a conflict, it's whatever is more restrictive.
It's always been, as far as I know, 100 feet setback from water, and that's not shoreline, that's in the district ordinances saying setback from any water. When you're talking about stream protection, then it's under shoreline, and we had changed it from 75 feet to 100 feet, so it's 100 feet from the shoreline ordinance regulations.
We run into it before. With the gentleman up by you, Matt. Who's the gentleman up by you that was trying to build a hearing? He ran into the 75 feet, 100-foot tank shows up in the shoreline zoning ordinance in the land use ordinance. Within the shoreline zoning ordinance, there's still where it will say 75 feet and 100 directly after it. And you try to fix that, but Norm Blake had an issue with it.
Yeah.
What was it?
He didn't believe that it was 100. So he thought the mistake was the number, not whatever the.
Oh, he thought we transposed the mistake.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's an issue. Well, I think that we've enforced 100 feet, because we did this in the hearing, right?
It's not really a big deal. When you get outside the difference between 75 feet and 100 feet is about 4 pieces. But when we went to change the shoreline ordinance, I recommended to make it all 100 feet, so it's an easy interpretation right across.
And we were going to, but Norm Blake said he was going to object to it and we wanted to make sure it passed, because we needed to keep this thing moving. So we didn't pursue that numerical change, because we were just trying to get it going.
Is that why when they rewrite the book, shoreline zone, there's 75 feet and in parentheses, there's 100?
No, that originates from Southern Maine Regional Planning.
Yeah, but that's what we were trying to correct, and Norm Blake didn't like it.
And so we didn't correct it, but we still should correct it, if we just didn't want to tie it to the change of the,
So, am I understanding that Norm didn't want to change it, he wanted to keep 75?
well, I don't think he was really that committed to it. I think he just wanted somebody to show him where, in fact, it was 100. Because he wasn't convinced it was 100. I don't think he was, like, staying at the table. I think he was just academically interested.
I'll just interpret it as it falls, so we know it.
So I think for the next town meeting, we should make that change.
Wetlands 75. That's what I do with every one of your copies of the ordinances, cross out the video.
Don't write it in, you gotta type it in somehow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Anything else? Okay, thanks. Thank you. Before we adjourn for the evening, is there, do we need to talk about next steps on Nature's Wilderness, after last week's, meeting? What's that?
I have a suggestion,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying anybody else is gonna agree with me, but, because of the issues between board members and the applicant or the person that wants to change, would it be okay on this instance to, move it to the Board of Appeals and let them decide what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
Okay. Just a thought.
I guess we have to make a determination on it, and it has to be challenged before it goes to the Board of Appeals, right?
Or we could choose not to, we could choose not to act, and then we go to the Board of Appeals like that. But I think we can handle it.
Okay. Do we have to wait? I want to know what the next step is. Do we have to have a discussion and make a decision, or do we have to wait for them to come back to us and present more to us before we, take a vote and make a decision?
I thought the way we left it was that they were going to, talk to their surveyor and get an appropriate legend on their diagram, which indicated whether or not the Deacon Road was in fact a road based on the surveyor's opinion, and then they were going to come back to us as well to tell us whether or not they in fact wanted to request a reformation of the CUP, which would open up the CUP to go through the process again.
But they haven't consummated a sale of that 70 acres yet.
I have no idea.
So basically, the answer is we're waiting for them to come back to us. There's nothing we need to do right now.
That's my understanding. Oh, that's just, yeah.
And any other, topics, questions, comments, before we, adjourn for the evening?
I have a question for Bob. You are as interested in land as I am, just intellectually interested in it.
Yeah.
The Deacon's Road. Was it ever a town road? You and I agree on that. Because my interpretation, it comes from my.
It must have been at some point, because part of it is still a town road.
But did the town ever accept as a road from Town Farm Road to Deacon Road?
So that,
I mean, my father explained it to me that Deacon Flint built the road. And as I see it, I mean, you know, I got a road in my woods that I helped build starting when I was 10 years old. And I'm still helping build it, you know, and that's kind of the way woods roads have always been. I mean, I could picture Deacon Flint walked through the woods and said, gosh, you know, I'll just lop off a couple of branches. And then, you know, and then after lopping off branches for a year or two, we chopped some trees down.
Well, the interesting thing is, I don't think he owned the whole way.
No, he didn't. My deed has been flyspecked, and nobody's ever come up with an easement for the Deacon's Road.
No, and, he built it, the story is that he built it to get to church.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that that's quite true. I think, I have another document that indicates that he maybe built it to get to what was called the Oak Bridge. It was a shorter way to get down toward the bridge to get across the river, maybe. I think it was still being used in the 1870s. Right, that's when 1870 or 1880, that's when the markers come out. Cyrus Goodman, the guy who built the fountain, also commissioned the markers. But I don't know when it was last used. I guess we could do some research, but it'd be a lot of work, you know.
The town officially abandoned, I don't know what the correct word there is, it's like 1922, 23, 24. Right around in the town reports.
That's when they abandoned the road?
Yeah, from Town Farm Road to Deacon Road.
Town Farm Road, the markers are
all the way back to Brown Marsh.
Yeah. But I don't know that it was ever accepted to begin with. Yeah. No, I mean, it's just, you know.
These are the little legal things that can stir up a lot of stuff right now.
I love this stuff, Dwight.
I don't think, though, that, whether the town accepted it or not has an impact on whether it's a road for subdivision purposes.
Well,
that's correct. If you built a road across your property prior to January 1st, and subdivided your property, that is two separate lots legally for subdivision purposes. Just because you built it and it's not town use, if you built the road and it's there, I think that says that subdivides that property.
I thought, Wes, didn't we say if you build the road, you don't subdivide your property?
Well, they did before 1973.
The road had to exist before the subdivision ordinance went into the rule at September of 1971.
So the road from 113 to the railroad tracks through my property means that I've got a subdivided lot down there?
Could you make that road before 1971?
Yeah? Yeah.
It means that you can choose to make it two separate lots, if the option you want to.
Without triggering the subdivision order.
Right. Now, if you make it two separate lots, it's going to get tax taxes like that, two separate residential lots. Like, they just keep it one lot.
It's all in tree growth. But, okay.
That road will divide the lot at your convenience.
Yeah, if it's a private way, I don't know if the state has a definition for.
So here's the tract for parcel of land. Highlighted. Because this is one that we had wrong. Tract or parcel of land means all contiguous land in the same ownership except that lands located on opposite sides of a public or private road are considered each a separate tract or parcel of land unless the road was established by the owner of the road on both sides of the road after September 22nd, 1974. So, if you had a road with the railroad tracks, when the farmhouse was the people walking in, that's how they would get down, put people on the train. Legally, that road has been there. It's hard to see right now, because the loggers are messed up, but technically, it subdivides that property.
I think there's a moment in time when a lack of use extinguishes the private road. So, I don't know what that is, but I'm sure that the law says, like, you know, X years of no use. And I have no, well, see, that's for something else. What's that?
Something comes through with the day, it's all about abandoned roads, it's a 29-year thing.
Yeah, but that's for public roads.
Right.
And that's why you have to be careful when you're talking about town roads, or town right away.
Well, this is the problem that Nature's Wilderness is gonna have to unravel.
I would leave it to them to solve.
Yeah, I don't think we need to solve it.
In their regular ordinances, in the definition of frontage, they're talking about what makes a frontage to a lot. And they're talking about ways that get to the land, and a way will be, mark the frontage of a lot. So the way is going down there, you have land on this side, you have two frontages. Okay, so in part 3, a way which has not been accepted by a government community, so which is established prior to the effective date of the main subdivision of September 1970, and is documented in a plan or deed recorded in the registry of deeds. In other words, you made the road there, and it's documented in your deed of your land that it is a way, but it's not a town road or something, it's legal as a road to divide the land.
So interestingly
So if
enough,
you just made a road as a path to get your tractors out of hand,
the Deacon's Road goes through my property,
it has to be deed.
but it's not in the deed.
Okay, then it's not the deed.
Interesting. Thank you for indulging me on that.
Anything else, folks?
Motion to adjourn. Second?
Good job. Thank you.